As a prophet, he could be ignorant, and I can understand that. As a prophet, he can be ignorant. The prophet doesn't know everything. But if you believe he's God, he shouldn't be ignorant of that.
I'm not attacking you as a person. I'm saying you have a lack of knowledge of the Old Testament narrative concerning the symbolic use of the fig tree, the vineyard, etc., etc.
When the disciples saw, they marveled. They're saying, how did the fig tree wither at once?
They didn't say, how did Jesus not know?
No. Throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament narrative, fruitlessness ends in judgment. So when Jesus saw the fruitlessness of the tree, he judged it and cursed it.
But it was not a season for fig.
This is a
So
parable.
no, my point. No, it's not a parable.
It is.
It's not a parable.
It's an explanation of
Jesus
seed.
went to the fig tree, hoping there were figs, and there was no
Jesus
figs.
didn't hope there were figs because he knew whether there were
Mark
figs or
saying
not.
because it was not the season of it. It's not a
Exactly.
parable.
Well, it's an explanation.
Okay.
I don't know how to.
So let me read
the
it.
right word
You know what
is.
happened afterwards?
Analogy.
You know, no, it's not. It's literally that's what happened. He cursed the tree, and next day Peter reminded him, "You see that tree, the one you cursed? Today it's just completely gone." That's what it happened. It literally happened. It was not a parable. If it was a parable, why would Peter be saying that?
Come on,
you want me to read it all?
To say the fig tree was still there doesn't negate that it's a parable. It was in fact a parable. Are you familiar with Jeremiah at all? Are you familiar with Jeremiah?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
Jeremiah as a prophet, yeah.
Well, within the book of Jeremiah, I mean, in the Old Testament, when you look at figs, fig trees, and vineyards, it's always referred to the spiritual state where it's healthy or sick to Israel. So in Jeremiah, it says about Israel that they're like rotten figs or rotten vineyard. So the fig tree is associated with the spiritual health of Israel. For example, if they're rebelling against God, they're like a rotten bunch of figs. Paul uses the same example in Romans that, about grafting's case, they're grafting and regrafting as a tree. So the fig tree is often used as a symbolic sign for Israel. So when Jesus was cursing the fig tree there, that's always been taught throughout all of Christian history that is a parable. Jesus is using that as an example to show, look, as the Israelites are, they look healthy from a distance, they look fine, they look very spiritual, but upon further inspection, they're fruitless. That's why Christ cursed the tree, and it's like
I know you're saying a parable. Let me read the whole context, and let's see if it's a parable or not.
No, one second. It would only make sense if you actually understood the Old Testament, which I'm sorry, I feel like you don't.
Okay, let be the other people judge of it. I know you're saying a parable. I'm saying it's not parable. Let's see if anybody hearing it, if it's a parable or not. The whole context.
Forgive me 1 second. I only brought up the fig tree in relation to Muhammad not being able to decide who was lying in terms of a man whose wife said that he had beaten her and he denied it. So my point is that a different verse, when he says, "I saw you beneath the fig tree," he did not literally see him there. He was
Can you
displaying.
bring that verse? Can you bring that verse?
Earlier.
Okay, let me
he was displaying.
Let me read this verse
some
and
form
the
of
whole
omniscience.
context. And the context is clear that literally
two
happened,
different
and it's not a
arguments
parable.
we're
Parable is meaning you're giving an example. It's not nothing to do with reality. It's just
That's not what parables can have. I could teach a parable now and use this tree as an example. It's still a parable. It doesn't mean you have to tell some mythical story that never happens.
What you're saying
That's
is
misunderstanding.
you're saying in this case it's a figurative speech and it's not literal. That's what you're saying, yeah? And I'm saying it's literal. Let's read this one first, and then you can bring your
That's
one.
what I'm saying. They're two separate arguments.
Yeah, okay. Here, that's different. Okay. Here's Jesus says, and seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf. By the way, it's Mark 11 verse 13. He went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard it. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who brought. It's a long thing, but I want to get to the point where Peter says to him that, "Look, the tree has died." Do you know that Peter says that to him? The tree has died. It's in Matthew.
Yeah, but Jesus already knew these
So the
things.
point here is
Nobody could tell him.
Brother,
what
are
he
you
did
listening
wrong.
here?
Ben?
Brother, are you listening here? Here he's saying same after that. He says, and then they came to Jerusalem after Jesus cursed the tree. They came to Jerusalem. This is a continuous thing happening. It's nothing to do with he's telling some sort of a parable. That's what he's actually he
symbolic of
did.
Israel.
Let me just correct
And then
you.
Peter, remember Peter says, you cursed the tree yesterday.
Yes, he did.
And yeah.
No, so
if
this
it's
is the
parable,
misunderstanding. This is the misunderstanding you're having. You've seen the thing because it is literally a real tree. It cannot be a parable. That's not true. A parable. I could use this tree as
No, but you keep saying that, but in this, what did you use?
Allow me to finish. I could use this tree as a real life tree and use it for a parable. That's perfectly
He came
fine.
to it.
Illustration.
Allow me to speak. I know he came to it. I totally
You're not
agree.
understanding what
No,
I'm saying.
I'm understanding everything
No,
that he's saying.
you-
I
you-
agree
you-
that he got 1 second. I agree he come to the tree. I agree he cursed it. No issue.
physically
But it
happened.
was in fact a parable. It physically
an
happened.
illustration.
They use it as
That's what I'm saying, it's physical
Let me
happen.
speak. Yes. Then we have no
But God
argument.
talks
But
about-
No,
one
the
second,
argument,
but-
argument,
but-
argument, no, no,
Israel
argument.
as a
misunderstanding you're
licentious
having.
woman.
Argument her, she was making how Muhammad
Muhammad.
didn't know
Nothing
who was
to do with
telling the
this
truth
picture.
as a prophet, he should know better. I use the same her argument. If Jesus
Yeah.
couldn't tell
And I'm
if
telling
it was
you
not
that
the
I've got
season,
a verse
he
that
came
says
to the
he
fig
can.
tree.
Okay,
He came to
that
the
only
fig. 1
works-
minute. I mean, let me make my point. He came to the fig tree for what reason? To have a fruit.
And that
But
only
he
works-
realized there's no fruit, meaning he didn't have the knowledge that tree doesn't have a fruit.
It only works. It's a false comparison. Muhammad didn't know something because he was ignorant. Jesus knew something, but he used it as an example to
To
point
show
to the
others.
fruitlessness. I mean, throughout the Old Testament, and again, if
It
you
doesn't-
Holy
the
Spirit,
verse
you
didn't say
will
that.
know
Verse
the
didn't
by
say
the
that.
fruit.
Verse didn't say he knew that.
If you stop
He
talking
said-
and let me speak, you'll hear me. If
says it
you
here.
understood the Old Testament context of the fig tree and
Stop-
the vineyard,
stop
and
hiding
all
behind
things-
the Old
I'm not.
Testament. I'm just
one
giving
second.
you the
Do you
words of
know why-
ignorance.
Do you know why you're doing this? It's because you know when I bring the Old Testament
Bring
into
it, bring it on.
Then
But
then
hang
don't
on.
tell me not to
Well,
bring
then
it.
let
The
him
reason why you
speak.
won't let me bring it up is because you know it's going to correct the point you're trying to make.
No, no.
So stop speaking for 2
What
seconds.
you
let me
what
speak.
you're doing is you just
Can I just bring this verse
not-
very quickly because it
misrepresenting
proves something.
this verse.
One
This
second.
verse is clearly saying you must understand. He
See,
Alright.
came to
you're
it for
speaking,
what?
You're speaking because you're insecure about your argument. Let me speak, and then you can answer after that. Okay?
But I'm gonna jump in.
Throughout the Old Testament, Israel was described.
This personal attacks doesn't work
No, it's
on.
not
Yeah,
because you
yeah,
keep
yeah, yeah.
interrupting.
You personally trying to
Stop
demean
interrupting
my
him.
argument.
I'm trying to respond to you, but you're not allowing me to
Can
respond.
you address this verse? He came
I'm
to the
trying
fig tree
I'm
for
trying
what?
to, I'm trying to. Now let me speak. Let me speak. When you understand, and bear in mind, Jesus was speaking to his Jewish context.
Who knew the Old
They knew the Old Testament. They knew a lot more of the Old Testament than all due respect you do. So when Jesus uses the fig tree, he's using it as an example to show them, look, this is what Israel is. I mean, it was a symbolic, it was a symbol of Israel, the fig tree. They knew that this represented Israel. And throughout the Old Testament, Israel is described as God's vineyard. So when the vineyard's bad, it's rotten. It's
Can you read the verse and I'll give you a commentary? I want you to read the verse and not your
So
explanation.
you don't know. This is your problem. You've come
No,
with this
because you're
argument.
running
You
away
didn't
from
read
this.
the verse.
And there's an
to be
answer
fair.
to it. You're not wanting to hear it. So just stop.
Can you
talking
read
for
the
2
verse
seconds.
and we see what you're saying? Because I don't want your commentary.
While you're finding it, I'm going to read this verse.
I'm going to speak anyway, whether you interrupt me or not, because you don't want to hear the answer. It just shows you being disingenuous.
No.
You know,
I don't want your commentary.
Well, then why?
Because you can make
You're
whatever
giving
you
your-
want.
Sorry,
you're
you want me
giving
to
your
give- one second,
exegesis.
Kate, you want me to give an answer. When I give the answer, you don't want to hear it.
No, I don't want your commentary. I said read the verse.
Listen, I can read the verse.
Just read the verse and then we
the verse
decide
doesn't-
if
reading
your
the verse-
commentary is right or
Reading the
not.
verse doesn't give the answer.
Okay, so you already decided it's not going to give the
Reading
answer.
reading-
You said you're going to go to jail.
Christianity believes in his
reading the verse.
The
interpretation.
verse is
Reading the-
clear.
Excuse
He
me, are you
come
interested or
to
not?
the tree
Are you interested or
for
not?
to finding something on it. Remember, he come to the tree
But
to
not because
finding
he was
something.
without
Finding
knowledge.
what?
Stop talking for 2 seconds, please, sir. I've allowed you to speak. Let me speak.
2 seconds
When-
over now.
2 minutes.
Are you a child or a man child?
okay,
Let me
I don't
speak.
know. You
Right.
try to be personally
throughout the
attacking
Old-
me.
so
You
I'm
can
not.
use
that.
You're
Start
just
quoting in a minute.
interrupting. No, look.
Okay.
Within the
That's
Old
what
Testament,
Christians do. They talk a lot just to take you
I
around.
think
You're
the
still
only one who's
talking.
talking lots, sir, is you.
Dancing
So
around
welcome
the
to
lawn.
Christ.
So
Amen.
as
Go on,
I
read the
was
verse.
saying, the fig tree, the vineyard, is often used to describe God's people, Israel. Okay?
Often, not always. Often. Not in
You're
this
not
verse.
really genuine.
Not in this verse.
Right, anyway, as I was saying, so when God uses in the Old Testament, for example, Jeremiah, when he says that Israel is like a rotten vineyard, that's a judgment upon Israel, because fruitlessness, throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament narrative, fruitlessness ends in judgment. So when Jesus saw the fruitlessness of the tree, he judged it and cursed it, and it's an illustration, it's a symbolic cursing, condemnation of Israel. Israel looks like this fig tree looks from a distance, and it looked like it had fruit, it looked like it was bearing fruit, it was healthy, it was in a good state. But upon further inspection, just like Israel, they was fruitless, therefore they was judged.
Done.
That has always
No,
been
it's my
that has
turn
always
now.
been the
Done.
that
My
has always
turn.
been the Christian answer. And you didn't want me to go to the Old Testament because you just wanted to
I
say.
was asking you to read the verse, but you would not.
Okay.
What do you mean I don't want you
Let's
to?
Skipped
let's
over a lot
have
of
the
it.
same standard, yeah. If I turned around and brought a
I've
verse,
got
up,
a verse.
If I brought up the Quran and said to you in Surah 4 where it says you can beat your wife, you're then going to say
I mean,
no,
you're talking about
you're
it.
no, because you're then going
You're
to
so
say
wrong in that.
you're going to say, well, hold on, let me explain it with these other bits and give you the context.
you do
And I'm
use
going to
the
say
tafsir,
absolutely
yes.
fine. You can do that.
Yeah.
At least
Will you
allow
accept
us
that
to do it.
then?
At least, if you did that, I'll listen to you because that's the way you have to explain it.
But you didn't read
have to give me
Jeremiah
the
at all.
context.
Right.
When
You
I
give
give
your
the
commentary.
context- Yes, absolutely.
This
You
is
give your
John.
commentary, but you didn't
John
read the
1,
verse.
I sound like an Israelite. John 1, 43 to 51, but I'm going to skip forward. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here truly is an Israelite, in whom there is no deceit. How do you know me?" Nathanael asked Jesus. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." And then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel." And Jesus said, "You believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree," therefore implying that he wasn't there, so it's some sort of miracle. You will see greater things than that. He then added, "Very truly, I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man," referencing himself. So there is a clear
That's a different context.
there is a clear example of Christ having given knowledge to someone that was not within his five senses to receive that knowledge, and he is called Rabbi and Son of God by the person he told. So it was understood by those present that he was doing something otherworldly, if you will.
Can I? That's a different context. This is a different context. You
This
can't.
is the verse I brought. This is
No, no,
our
I was
conversation.
talking
You
about
brought
this one.
something
No, no.
different. We were talking
No,
about
no.
Muhammad.
When I said that he came to the fig tree and
Yep.
he didn't know it was fruit or not, I was talking
Yep.
about this verse.
And I
wasn't
countered
talking.
you with
no,
this.
but I want you to address this
But you
verse.
can't dominate the conversation.
No,
I'm
not
bringing
I-
this
no,
evidence.
my point is this verse, so you can't take me to some other verse.
Yes, I can.
accept.
You took me from 539 to 513 to a
That's called
tafsir.
double standards.
To someone,
539? What was
when Moses was talking about 539, you said, no, we were talking about 513 or whatever
I
it was.
wasn't talking about Moses.
Oh, don't get...
539.
Yes, this is Moses.
The original Moses,
When
not-
we came
539.
earlier, you said it was verse 539 something.
Sorry, 3359.
3359.
3359.
It wasn't
Oh, right.
Moses.
But
It is Muhammad.
So,
The
yeah.
Allah's giving the. Anyway, we're not talking about that.
So the-
Let's address this point here.
Okay.
Jesus, read again and listen to the. Okay, assalamu alaikum, brother. Take. And seeing in distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it.
I brought up John and Nathaniel.
Can I just say it again?
Of course you can.
Listen, this every word is very important to listen. What's happening here? This is nothing to do with parable. He's seeing in distance a fig tree in leaf. He went to see if he could find anything on it, meaning he didn't know there was something on it or not, because he thought there was a fruit there. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. Why Mark has to say that there is no season for figs, meaning Jesus thought there were figs there, but he found there's no figs there. That's what I was talking about. He was ignorant
You're
that it was not
incorrect.
even
No,
season
no,
for it.
no,
you are
This is not a
incorrect.
parable. This is literally
But you
happened,
are
and we
incorrect.
found later on he cursed the tree.
No, no, it's-
and
I hear
Peter
you, but
said,
you're
Peter
incorrect.
says next day, look, the tree you cursed yesterday is no more listening me. Peter saw something with there with the
It's
tree. So this
physically
is not
there.
a
There
parable.
is
Notice none of us
physically a
interrupted you.
tree.
This is
No,
not a
no.
parable. Do you acknowledge that? This is not a parable.
No.
This is literal. What?
Can I say something? Notice we didn't interrupt you, so please give us the same level of respect, okay?
Yeah, but address what my
He's
my
already
issue is.
interrupted
You're already
you.
interrupted.
No, but address
You
my
are.
issue.
Scared of the
My
answer.
issue
You're
is
scared of the answer.
no. My issue is literal or parable.
Parable.
Both. No, there's a physical tree being used to illustrate
Which
something
Peter
else.
saw,
Okay.
which Peter
in a-
saw.
Let me just say, in a marriage ceremony, you're asked to join hands with your, your husband or wife. That's a physical and metaphorical joining, a union of two bodies becoming one flesh. You're not going to hold hands forever. It's symbolic of the overall marriage. And the tree, even though it's a physical tree, is used for illustrative purposes. It really was cursed. It really didn't have any fruit. But to suggest that Christ didn't know there was no fruit on it, it doesn't say so.
Right,
That is not
we
true.
allowed you to speak. Kay spoke.
Matthew
now
20.
allow
No,
me
it's
to
his
speak.
turn. It's
No,
his turn.
but Matthew 21. I've just got to Matthew 21, 20 is more clear. When the disciples saw, they marveled. They're saying, how did the fig tree wither at once?
They didn't
Meaning,
say,
Listen,
how
no,
did Jesus not
no,
know?
no. But
Abbas.
meaning this is literally happening.
Abbas,
It
It's
is
not
literally
Abbas. So he
happening,
says
yes.
not.
No.
But both.
He says a parable.
No, he said it did
I-
You
literally
say
happen.
it's not literally
If
parable.
you let me speak,
No, he
answer.
didn't say
I
that.
said
He did say that.
For goodness sake. Abbas, be a man of integrity, please. I said to you earlier, he absolutely cursed a real fig tree. Yes.
So it literally happened.
It literally
Yes.
happened.
That's my point.
But
But there's a reason why he done that. He literally cursed a tree, but the reason behind it was not just because he was angry that it didn't give him fruit. He done that, as I said earlier, the Jews, they would know that the fig tree, the vineyard, etc., things like this is a symbolic, is a symbol of Israel. So whether it's rotten fruit, for example, Jeremiah, Deuteronomy, other places talks about the rotten fruit of Israel. So does it mean Israel is literally a rotten fruit? No, it's symbolic of their spiritual state. So when Jesus says here, he curses the fig tree, it looks good and healthy from afar, just like Israel. They look very religious with all their garments and their prayers and all of this.
But they were
Upon further inspection, as Jesus once said to them towards their face, he said, you're like whitewashed tombs. You look good on the outside, but inside you're dead bones. So when he cursed the fig tree...
I have a question.
One second. When he cursed the fig tree, he cursed it because it looks healthy, just like Israel, but he cursed it and that was a judgment upon Israel. You look healthy, but in reality you're not.
I have a question.
And that's always
So
been
it has
the
leaves.
teaching.
It has the leaves. Look very healthy when he went there.
yep,
So he cursed because it doesn't have
fruit.
fruit.
And the fruit
Yes,
of the
hang on,
spirit
hang on.
is
You're missing them.
peace,
You're
No,
missing
patience,
no.
kindness,
Let me understand it.
long-suffering.
He went to the tree
Yes.
because he looks there was leaves there. It look fruitful, like you say, Israel, but it has no fruits. Like children of Israel, they have no fruits.
Yes.
They have. But Mark say it was not a season for the fruit.
And it's not the
Meaning
season for
it's
Israel.
not the fault of the tree not having a fruit
No one said it
because
was the fault
it
of
was
the
not
tree.
the season. No.
Sorry,
So why
Abbas.
he cursed it? Why?
Because
I've
Israel
Why he
told you
is cursed.
maybe 3 or 4 times now. Maybe you have hearing issues. I don't know, but you're just not listening. Okay, right.
3 or 4 times. What you mean, in the
One second.
past or just now?
Just now.
Oh,
1 second.
I'm coming
Yeah.
back.
For example, yes, it didn't have. It wasn't a time for figs, but he didn't go up to it thinking, "Oh, I'm definitely going to get figs here." He used that fig tree as an illustrative purpose. He used it as an illustration to show Israel's fruitlessness. Therefore, Israel will be judged. That's what it was. If you read any Bible commentary, you will read that. You're just reading this verse, and without giving it the context. Again, we could do that with the Quran. If I come to you and said, Surah 4, you can beat your wife, you would then say to me, hold on, let's look at the context, let's read it through the lens of Muhammad, let's do all of these things. And I'd say that's perfectly fine for you to do. You're not allowing us to do that. That's called double standards, and that's called inconsistency. And inconsistency is a sign of a failed argument. And your argument here, Abbas, is
No,
failed.
it's not. I am acknowledging in the
It's
Old
because you don't
Old
understand the Old
Testament fig
Testament.
tree is used as children of Israel. I understand that, even in New Testament as well. But this particular verse is so clear that Jesus thought he will find something on the tree, but he didn't find it because Jesus, in my view, the verse says he was ignorant of there was no fruit.
Does it say he
Because
was ignorant?
he-
Does it say he was
yes,
ignorant?
because he says
Show me those words.
No, because he says he went there to find something. Meaning he didn't know that he will find something or not, but he found nothing. Meaning beforehand he didn't know that. So if he was God, he didn't even need to go near the tree to see if there is anything or not. He should know beforehand why he went there to find something, but he didn't find anything. And Mark said because there was no season of it. Do you understand my problem
So
here?
you do have a massive problem. Your problem is basic hermeneutics and basic exegesis. So I would say that you struggle with hermeneutics, you struggle with exegesis, you don't understand the Old Testament. This is why you don't understand.
And
this.
you're not doing a very good
This-
job as well to
this-
explain
this,
that.
This is why you don't.
He
understand.
went there to find something. He doesn't have to go there, but he knew there was nothing there. As a
Abbas,
God,
I didn't interrupt you. Allow me to speak. You struggle with hermeneutics. You struggle with exegesis. You don't understand the Old Testament. You don't understand the symbolic use of the fig tree or the vineyard in the Old Testament. So when it comes to this, you're saying, well, therefore that
Personal-
must be.
personal
that must
attack
be,
doesn't
No, it's not a
solve the
personal attack.
problem.
It's not a person. I'm not attacking you as a person. I'm saying you have a lack of knowledge of the Old Testament narrative concerning the symbolic use of the fig tree, the vineyard, etc., etc. So when Jesus, bear in mind, do you believe that Jesus knew the Old Testament?
Jesus knew the Old Testament
Yes.
as a prophet of God. Yes, of course.
Do you believe his disciples would have known the stories of the fig trees and the way symbolic it was used?
Not all. There are many times the disciples were ignorant. Many times he said to me, "Why don't you understand?" Many times he kind of cursed them in a way. Don't you understand things like when they don't understand
That's why he explained.
the bread? He changed the 3 breads into 5,000 people. Next time they say they have 5 breads. How are you going to feed them? So
That's not talking
many
about-
of the
no, no.
disciples were ignorant
No,
as well.
no,
So
no,
not
no,
all
no, no,
disciples
no.
were
But-
as
no, no.
knowledgeable and as knowledgeable as
No,
you think they were.
I'm not saying they're knowledgeable in the fact that whether they know Jesus or not is going to make bread and multiply it. But in regards to the Old Testament, they would have been knowledgeable of it because every Jew recites the Torah, they speak it, this, that, and the other. They're in synagogue from an early age. They'd know the Old Testament stories. To say they wouldn't, again, is not historically true. So they would have understood that the fig tree and the vineyard would have been used symbolically to represent Israel. So this cursing of the fig tree, they would have understood it as a symbolic cursing of Israel, of condemnation of their fruitlessness. As this tree, as I said again, and it's going to be the last time I say it because you're not listening, as the fig tree represents Israel, this is a symbolic act with Jesus where he's cursing the fig tree, showing that although you look healthy, you look physically good, you look like you're healthy. So I'm put off by those people there shouting, you look healthy. Just as Israel looks healthy, they look all good with their garments and their prayers and everything else they do, they look very religious. As he said to them, you are dead bones, which means you're a whitewashed tomb, which means you look good on the outside, but inside you're spiritually dead. So this was a symbolic cursing of the fig tree, which represents the fruitlessness of Israel.
Do you think when Jesus went to the fig tree, he was hungry?
Sorry?
When Jesus went to the fig tree, was he hungry or not?
I think he went with the purpose of showing the illustration.
So he was hungry or not? That's my question. Was he hungry?
I don't think he went for it for fruit. I think he went
That's
for it.
not my answer. My question. Was he hungry or
I'm
not?
asking you a question. I just said I don't think. See, this is your problem. You want me to answer it in a few specific words.
No, because
I'm
you
not
know
doing that.
the answer is he was hungry.
No, I'm giving you the answer. I don't think he went to the fig tree looking for fruit.
Who are you to think?
I think
The Bible says he was hungry.
I went to show me where it says he was hungry. I think he went to the fruit tree.
Okay. Let me read it. Chapter Matthew.
Yeah.
I'll call the doctor.
I don't know your name.
You know?
Ben. Matthew chapter 21.
Yes, he was hungry to go to the fruit.
Okay, you
He
say
went
show
to-
me
no,
now.
no,
You say he's
no, no,
hungry.
he
Okay,
was
now you
hungry-
accept
no,
it.
He went to the fruit. He was hungry. Yes, he went to the fruit tree. His intention wasn't to pick fruit and eat it. His intention was to show the illustrative parable.
That is
of-
your exegesis.
Sorry,
Or eisegesis.
that's every single
That's your
commentary you can
eisegesis.
put- I'll give you 20
verses
I'll
are
give
clear.
I'll give
You are
20
putting your exegesis in it.
No, what you're doing there, you're trying to
Commentators can
bring
make anything with it. They want to cover this ignorance of Jesus.
Okay.
So they will say whatever.
Okay.
But the verse is very clear. In the morning, as chapter Matthew 21 verse 18 says, in the morning as he was returning to the city, he was hungry.
Yes, he was hungry.
And he was
didn't
hungry.
go there to
And
pick
seeing
fruit.
a fig tree by the wayside, he went to it for what? To get some fruit. And found nothing on it, but leaves only, meaning he thought there was fruit, but actually he found there's no fruit. I mean, that's exactly what I was talking about. He was ignorant of that, meaning as a prophet, he could be ignorant, and I can understand that. As a prophet, he can be ignorant. The prophet doesn't know everything. But if you believe he's God, he shouldn't be ignorant of that. When he was hungry, he shouldn't go anywhere near that tree because he knows he's not going to find any fruit. So the context is saying.
As I said, this is because you don't understand the Old Testament symbolic usage of the fig tree or the vineyard. When you understand that, because all you've done, due respect, you've found this on Google, and you're coming to the Christians like, look, this is what it says. We are all aware of this verse.
This is your Bible. It's not a Google.
We are all,
It's a
yeah, but
Bible.
I guarantee you found that. Did you find that just through your reading of the New Testament?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Okay, you've read that, but the thing is, you've read that about understanding the symbolic use of the fig tree or the vineyard within the Old Testament. Within the Old Testament, the fig tree was always used as a symbol of Israel. Always. You can find it in Deuteronomy, in Jeremiah, you can find it in multiple places throughout the Bible. So what I'm saying to you is this, that Jesus was using this symbolic, which all the Jews would have known, this is symbolic of Israel. He was using this to show, look, as this, this is going to be the last time I say this because it's falling on deaf ears, unfortunately.
Yeah.
As you look at this fig tree, it looks healthy. It looks like it's bearing fruit, as Israel did. They looked good in their garments. They would memorise parts of the Torah. They'd have those bits of scriptures attaching to their tassels. They looked very holy. This tree looked very healthy, but in reality, it wasn't healthy.
So he was teaching them. He was teaching them.
It was a teaching
So
moment,
in
yes.
teaching them,
We have a difference on interpretation.
So in teaching
but
them,
you're
he
going
has
against
to
the
be.
hist-
He
you're
was
going
hungry.
against the historic view of this.
No, in teaching that example of children of Israel, like a fig tree, he was hungry and he saw the tree with the leaves. He went there. I mean, come on, this is literally showing ignorance. But then you making it that he's teaching. I understand some other places he taught that. But in this one, in my view, I don't think you clarified it very well. You're playing with the Old Testament, but this is a clear
I'm
thing.
not playing with the Old Testament. I'm giving you what the Old Testament says. You're ignoring the Old Testament because you don't know the Old Testament.
Yeah, I'm not saying I know the Old
So
Testament. but
then
when-
why? Okay, so many times to explain some parts of the New Testament, when they quote things and things like that, you have to look at what the Old Testament says. You are unfortunately not doing that.
Well, we just discovered Jesus was also hungry when he went to the fig tree.
Yeah, he was a man and a God.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Can be
so he
good,
was
sorry.
hungry. He was not only teaching a parable, but
He knew
you
where
see
the
in the
food was
beginning.
coming
In
from.
the beginning, what Ben says, it's a parable.
It is
Then he came.
No.
Okay, it's a literal. Now
It's
he said.
both.
No, now you are.
Before you say parable.
No. Now
I asked
He
you.
said
It's
there
on the
was a
video there.
literal
It's in the
tree.
video there. You say it's a
okay.
parable and not
Now
literal.
you are either lying, or you, or
It's in the
once again,
video.
you're not.
It's all recorded.
Then you can record
When
that.
I asked you a question,
Then you
is it literal or parable?
No, as
Your
I
answer
said,
was
it was
parable.
it was a-
Until she says literal, you say yes, literal and
You're
parable. both.
misunderstanding what a parable
Oh.
is. You can use a real
You can
object.
use a real
you can
thing
use
to
a real
illustrate
yes,
a point.
I said to you earlier, and again, you're either not listening or you're lying. I said earlier, and it will be on the video, that yes, it was a real fig tree. He literally cursed a fig tree, but he used that fig tree to tell a parable. You can use a real object. You can use a very real object to tell a parable.
So literally that happened.
People
I
do
think
it
we're going
with
around.
See,
We're going around the
we're only
circle.
going round in
People do it with
circles.
mathematics.
Sorry,
They
second,
say
right.
if you had 4 real pigs and you take away 2 real pigs, like it's illustrative.
We are only going round in circles.
Sorry,
One
sorry,
second.
sorry. That shows
Abbas,
the ignorance of Jesus.
Abbas, we are only going around in
And he went
circles
there
here.
to eat something to find a
Ignorance doesn't, hunger
About-
isn't
okay.
a show of ignorance.
You are only going around in circles here because we've derailed your arguments. You have to keep coming back to the same point. Well, you said it wasn't. You said it wasn't. It wasn't really real and it didn't happen. Well, actually, I said it did
I don't
happen.
think you
So you're
had a-
going around in circles.
I don't think you were very much aware of these verses and the context.
I'm not aware of
because
those,
when I
okay.
asked you,
Sure.
was he hungry?
watching
Was he
can
hungry or
decide.
not? You had no answer. You said,
No,
"Show me
I
where
have
it
given-
says."
I have
When I
given
show you the hungry,
I've given you
then
the
you
answer
admitted
5
it.
times. You're
You
not
know
listening,
that
and they're going.
Christ
And
ate,
if this is
slept-
posted, they're going to see
Wait.
that you've ignored every single
I'm
answer
keep-
given to you because it's derailed your argument. Because you have to have it as Jesus was ignorant. You can't take the Old Testament context and apply that to what Jesus was doing in this symbolic gesture. You can't take that because you don't
Stop
understand it.
saying symbolic.
Because you
That's
don't
It's
another
symbolic.
word.
You don't
It's
understand
literal.
because you don't
No,
It's literally
no, you
happened.
can't accept. Yes, it did.
It's not just
But a
say,
literal
when you say
happening
symbolic,
could be
it could be just meaning
illustrative.
like just an example and not literal.
One second.
So say
Okay, one second. This is symbolic. This is symbolic. If I shake Kay's hand, yeah, we're going to shake
go
hands.
for it.
This is symbolic of our friendship. This is a real handshake.
And,
Our friendship you can't
dis-
see.
no.
Disobedience
Symbolic
to
can
corona
also mean
advice.
not literal. You understand? Symbolic can also mean not literal. Something doesn't happen
It
literal.
can
also mean
But when you
literal.
say symbolic, it's ambiguous. It could be literal. But here we're talking about
Illustrative.
literal things. He taught something from literally what he did.
Yep.
But I'm saying it, he didn't taught, he was ignorance of him because verses are clear.
But you
In
just,
the morning-
I've given you a verse where he shows
That's a different context.
extrasensory
No,
knowledge.
I understand that word. That's talking
miracle.
about children of Israel. That's talking
No,
about.
it's not talking about children of Israel. John is showing that Christ has knowledge not gained by sight, sound, taste,
Okay.
touch, or hearing. He knows that he was beneath the fig tree.
I-
Nathanael says, and he says, because you have told me this, I tell you, you are the Son of God. And Christ says, you told me this because I told you that, but you will see greater things than that, implying that that is great, but you will see
Okay.
greater. So Christ has full knowledge apart from the hour.
So Christ knew everything.
No, but he knew
What
there were
about
no
if
figs
I
on
show
the
you
tree.
a false prophecy?
No,
of
if you
Christ
stick with your
in
argument,
Mark 13.
if you stick with your argument, he
That's even
knew-
worse, that's worse than
he
that.
He knew that there were no figs on the tree when he approached it, and after he left it. Obviously, he already knew. He was using the real live cursed tree to illustrate a wider point about Israel and their spiritual.
Do you heard that
fruits.
when we were talking about that he was hungry? When he went to the fig tree,
He was a
hungry.
man.
So yes. So why he went to the fig tree? Because he was hungry.
No.
Oh, that's what he's saying. That's what the Matthew. I think we're going around the circles here.
Okay.
I made my point. I think you guys,
Well, I
in
think
my view,
he's
you are
right.
in denial.
Oh, no,
Okay.
the only
In my
reason you're.
view, if you're a Christian, you'd be a heretic.
The problem is that we've derailed your arguments. You keep coming back full circle. What you're saying originally, you're only
By
coming.
saying that you derail my argument
only,
doesn't make it you derail
You are only
my
coming to this
argument.
conclusion because you are ignorant. You are only coming to this
Of the Old
conclusion
Testament.
because you are ignorant of the Old Testament usages
You
of
didn't
the
bring
fig tree.
nothing from the Old Testament. You know
He
that.
did.
You just
Look
keep
at-
saying
look
that.
at
No,
it.
you didn't.
Rewind.
Ger-
Did
Ger-
you read the verse, chapter and verse? Let's read the chapter
If you
and
stop
verse.
interrupting, I can say.
Do you wanna tell me the
if
verse?
you look into Jeremiah, if you look in Jeremiah, you look in Deuteronomy, there are other places where the fig tree is symbolically used to represent the nation of Israel, God's people.
I understand that. I know that.
And in the Old
Ah.
Testament,
No, no,
where-
I-
we don't
I'm
need
Abbas,
acknowledging you
Abbas,
that.
and within the Old Testament, Israel is symbolically. God uses the fig tree, he uses a vineyard, and things like this, rotten fruit, good fruit, to show if Israel is in a good state or a bad state. So when Jesus is speaking
Jeremiah
to his,
11:16.
when Jesus is speaking to his
What is it?
Jewish, one second, when Jesus is speaking to his Jewish audience there, who understand the symbolic use of the fig tree, when he curses the fig tree, what he's doing there is showing that yes, this fig tree looks very much like Israel. It looks healthy, but he's cursing it because really it bears no fruit, much like Israel. Jesus also said to the Jews, you are like a whitewashed tomb. A whitewashed tomb that's clean on the outside, inside it's like dead bones, it's rotten. So this fig tree was a symbolic condemning of Israel. They look They look like they're bearing fruit, but in reality they're not. That's always been the Christian understanding, and the reason why you don't understand that, all due respect, Abbas, is because you are ignorant of the Old Testament usage for the fig
Let's
tree.
go a little bit
No,
deeper.
no, can
Let's
I
go a
just
little bit
quickly
deeper.
quote this? Jeremiah 8:13. It says, "I will surely consume them. There will be no more harvests of figs and grapes. Their fruit trees will all die. Whatever I gave them will soon be gone. I, the Lord, have spoken." So there he's cursing them through. But the one thing I wanted to say was the house of Israel was symbolized by the olive tree. For speaking of Israel, the prophet Jeremiah recorded, "The Lord called thy name a green olive tree, fair and of goodly fruit." So that's a direct reference of Israel being.
And
Okay,
so Jesus' audience would have understood that. They knew that this was a symbolic, a gesture of Israel, an example of Israel. The fig tree was always used to represent the children of Israel, to represent God's people. The vineyard, the fig tree, all represents Israel.
Okay.
So rotten fruit represents Israel being bad. Good fruit represents,
Ben, my problem here
represents
is
the healthiness
I
of Israel.
understand-
So when Jesus curses the fig tree, he's saying you look good, but in reality you're not.
Okay, my problem here is children of
you don't have the
Israel.
Holy Spirit.
Children of Israel look very good, like a fig tree with the leaves,
Yeah.
but they have no fruits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's their fault, and God cursed them because they bear no fruits. Yeah. So it's their fault. They should have fruits,
Yes.
but they didn't have fruits.
Yes.
But this example doesn't fit on the fig tree. On this example, why? Because Mark says it's not a fault of fig tree not to have fruits, because it was not the season for it. I understand the example. It's my point here.
Deuteronomy.
It's my,
Do
my,
you
my,
think
my,
that-
Ben, you're talking over me now. I was listening to you. My problem here is, if the case was, it was the season for the fig tree,
Yeah.
and yet this fig tree doesn't give fruit, then it was the fault of fig tree. But it was not a fault of fig tree because it was not season.
Because Christ was coming
So
with a new
this example
covenant.
doesn't fit in
So,
it.
Abbas-
Unless, just one last point. Unless it was literally that happened,
It did
as
literally
it
happen.
says, Jesus was hungry. He wanted a fruit.
And he
He
used it
saw
as
the
an
tree.
illustration.
He went there. He found nothing. Then he cursed
Abbas.
it. So meaning he was ignorant, literally.
Abbas, do you,
missing
Abbas,
Tesco's
do you believe? Do you believe that Jesus, being a good Jew, in that, bearing in mind most of what the Jews would most of their work and the way they'd earn the living would be livestock and agriculture, so they'd be very familiar when fig trees, for example, were in season. Do you think Jesus was really ignorant of a common day fruit that they'd eat on a daily basis? Do you really think he'd be ignorant of whether that's
My
bearing
straight
fruit or
answer
not?
is, as a Muslim,
Okay.
I don't deny this verse is true or not. I'm saying probably it's real. As a Muslim, I believe the Prophet doesn't know all worldly matters. They're all worldly things.
Because
Even the
Jesus
Prophet
is
Muhammad
God.
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, once he shows his ignorance about
Doesn't know
the
who's
farming
lying
of the
with the woman being
date
beaten.
date palm trees. So as a prophet of God, it's possible that he didn't know the season. He wasn't a farmer.
As
He
a
was a
Christian,
rabbi.
he's God.
So he didn't know. Yes, but that's the problem. As a prophet, if he didn't know that, I have no problem. That prophet is not supposed to know it. But you say he's God.
Yes.
So as a God, he should not be ignorant.
He did know.
So
He
I don't
wasn't
think so.
ignorant.
Jesus, as a prophet,
He
would
was
know
not
the fig
ignorant.
And
tree.
again, as Kay is saying, we don't believe he was ignorant. We believe that he used a fig tree as a symbolic condemning of Israel's fruitlessness. Because within the Old Testament context, again, if you understood the Old Testament narrative of the fig tree and the usage of that,
They
you'd
used
understand that
baskets at one point.
you would understand that fruitlessness, whenever Israel is fruitless, it always ends in judgment. So this fig tree, it didn't bear fruit, so it was judged and it was condemned. That's a symbolic act upon Israel. You can either accept that or you don't. We've told you
No,
the
I'm
same
not gonna
answer.
accept that.
Israel, sort
I'm
yourself
not gonna
out.
accept that. Because
We've
to
spoke
me,
about
it's so
this.
clear that he's hungry. He went there for a
No.
fruit.
Do
Do you know why?
and
Because
there was no fruit.
it doesn't fit your narrative.
Can I just ask about the hadith?
It doesn't fit the narrative you're trying to make. So
No, he's hungry.
No.
The Bible says he's hungry.
I just
He's
wondered-
hungry.
No, it's
He
a
went
bit
there.
Israel.
He didn't find anything, and he cursed it. Meaning he didn't. If he says that he just went there and he showed them example, I mean the whole context is
That's about
clearly
using
saying.
that would
and
only
non-literalism.
work. Your argument would only work if you ignore context. If you ignore the context
And
of
the Old
if you
Testament in its entirety
if you
and the audience
It
to
would
which he
only
was
work if
speaking.
you was to ignore context and the usage of the fig tree within the Old Testament, which Jesus' Jewish audience would have been very familiar
And
with.
if
So
you
it's Jeremiah
subscribe to
31,
Ben's
yeah?
channel,
It's
you
Jeremiah
can probably
31,
learn
yeah?
more
Also
about that sort of thing, Bible
Deuteronomy
outreach.
elsewhere, yes.
I understand other places he give a fig tree example as the Jews, but I
Yeah, this
take-
one you won't accept.
I take that. No, because this one is literally telling
Ah.
us that he's hungry. He went
Sahih
there.
Abbas.
He find no food because there was also the season
How
of
do
it.
you know? Sorry, how do you know? What commentary are you
No,
using?
that's what the verse says.
What commentary are you using?
I'm not
to-
using no
Okay,
commentary.
But you
Okay,
just
I'm
declared.
just using
sorry,
the
no, I'm
scripture.
going to get this out.
I'm
You
using the
just-
scripture.
Excellent. You just declared I know of other multiple symbolic references, but this one is literal. How do you know?
Commentary of by who? Christians, is it?
How do
Christians,
you know?
yeah?
How do you know?
Those
How
Christians,
do you
no,
know?
you are bringing the commentaries
I'm
of Christians.
asking- I'm
There's
saying
no
your
Muslim commentary on the
opinion.
Bible, is there? So they are Christians, and these
And
Christians
which of
defending
those say that
their
Jeremiah
ignorance
is
of Jesus,
figurative
the ignorance of
and
Jesus,
Mark
so
is
they make
literal?
the exegesis
You're not
to defend this
answering because you
ignorance.
don't have an answer.
Let me just point out the
No,
double.
I heard you.
Abbas,
but
don't
I'm
have an
answering
answer.
you.
You
Abbas,
haven't.
Okay,
let me-
ask me that question.
Who supports your idea that the fig tree in Mark is figurative?
context.
Literal. Wait, no, not context. Who?
Oh,
Not
now
what,
you
who?
want context.
No, this is, I'm telling
Context
you
is
to read
not
the
a person.
context. I keep saying that we read the
Let
context.
me just point something out. Let me point out the double standard.
Context is not everything.
Okay,
Context should be over
Let me
everything.
point out the double standards, and this isn't diverting. This is pointing out the double standards of your argument. If I bring to you Surah 4, where it says that the husband can beat your wife, yeah. If I bring that up to you, you are then
Tap.
going to say to me, or tap, whichever you like.
Let's bring it.
No, 1 second.
Let's talk about it.
1 second. You are then going to say to me, okay. Let me read this and understand this through the lens of the Prophet. Yeah, you're going to say, let me bring tafsir commentaries. Let me see how Muhammad interpreted this and how Muhammad acted and things like this. You're going to use all of that, which I think that's fine. It's acceptable to do so, but you won't allow us to use Old Testament context to apply this.
No, you already said that before as well. Let's talk about that verse, and I will explain to you. It's not the same thing.
It's absolutely the same thing.
it's
Do you know
not.
why it's the same thing? Because if I was to ignore the context, if I was to ignore all the tafsir and the life of Muhammad, if I was to ignore all that, that says what it says. You're ignoring all the Old Testament context, you're ignoring all the Old Testament narrative, therefore that's what it says. It's called double standards.
No. Ben, this verse
the
has
same
nothing
space
to
in
do
the
with
Bible.
Old Testament.
No, I'm showing you the double standards.
No. This is just so literally, he wanted the food and he didn't know there was a food there. It's just so clear, but you are just trying to make it
Do you know what you've done?
Same
You know
like
what
Old
you've
Testament.
done? You've done a full circle. We answer you because you won't accept the answer. You're going, well, no, this is what it says, therefore that must be what
And
it
I
means.
reject your
This is
answer.
what it says, therefore it must be what it
Because-
means.
no.
You're rejecting the answer because you don't understand the Old Testament narrative. And again, if I bring up parts of the Quran and say to you, that's what it says, ignore the context, that's what it says. You're then going to say, let me bring up tafsir, let me bring up commentaries, let me bring up the life of Muhammad. And I'll say that's acceptable, that's how you interpret it, give it to me. But when we do it, you're saying, no, that can't be what it means because it doesn't fit my narrative.
I think if you read this to any sincere person and they see the context, his context is so clear.
Any sincere
I just-
person?
No.
Are you calling
I can
me
give it.
insincere?
I can give this.
Or a neutral person.
The only insincere,
Neutral
the only,
person. I
the
may be
only
biased.
person,
I may be
the
biased.
only
You may be
person-
biased. The neutral person can clearly see the
only-
man is hungry.
the only
He went to
insin-
the tree hoping there's a fruit there, and he didn't find fruit, and he cursed. It's
Abbas,
just clearly
all due
showing
respect,
the
all due
ignorance
respect,
of
the
Jesus.
only insincere person here is yourself, because you are ignoring context. You are ignoring the Old Testament usage of the fig tree in the vineyard.
But-
You are ignoring that the audience Jesus spoke
I'm
to
not
were
ignoring the
Jews,
context.
and you are ignoring that the people Jesus was speaking to were Jews who would understand
Please,
the point
please.
he's trying to make. You're ignoring all of that. So you are an enemy of context. You don't understand hermeneutics. You don't
Your
understand
personal
exegesis.
attacks doesn't work, brother.
It's
Right,
not,
okay.
Abbas, it's not a
But the
personal
Quran-
attack.
You are ignorant of this.
sorry.
You're ignorant of that.
That's not a personal.
You are-
That's not a personal attack.
Okay, let's talk about it. You have anything about Islam? You have anything about Islam? You
you
go.
have to use
I think
the
we're going round the circle, and I think we're not going
Okay.
to.
Can I just- let me
let's
do the
agree
wrap
to
up a
disagree,
second.
but disagree to
You
part.
earlier
Let's
said,
talk. Yeah.
All right, you earlier said that when the Quran says from those who fear rebellion, you must use other parts of the Quran to check what they mean by
That's right, yeah,
fear.
yeah.
So what the other parts of the Bible mean by fig tree is Israel. Whether there's a physical tree or whether it's a story that's relayed to disciples or in Jeremiah, it still represents, whether it's physically planted in the ground or I just say there is a tree, it's the same tree.
Still talking about fig tree. I thought we were
Let's
going
go.
to talk about something
Go
else.
on
do
the
another
subject of
topic.
nicotine addiction.
Yeah.